Buenas noches. Pues no sé qué pasó. Ya no es lectura matutina, parece que es lectura nocturna. No sé, no sé, huevón. Llámeme como quieran, pero pues me da hueva en las mañanas levantarme a leer. Pero pues espero que vuelva a la rutina de leer las mañanas. Y no, pues todos nos vale madre. Pues el chiste es leer por tal hora que sea, a la hora que se pueda. Y pues, hey, bueno, febrero. Son las 10:44 pm. Hey, bueno. It was an ordinary summons from the district police station to appear that day at 9:30 at the office of the district superintendent. But when has such thing happened? Déjame quitar esta chingadera porque no esté estorbando. But when has such a thing happened? I never have anything to do with the police. And why just today? Ah, puta madre. Pinche. Ahí está. Soy 15 minutos. Hoy 15 minutos porque es tarde. Estoy cansado y me voy a dormir. Está bueno. Está bueno. And why just today? He thought, in agonizing bewilderment. Good God. Only get it over soon. He was flinging himself on his knees to pray, but broke into laughter. Not at the idea of prayer, but at himself. He began hurriedly dressing. If I'm lost, I am lost. I don't care. Shall I put the sock on? He suddenly wondered. It will get dustier still. Then the traces will be gone. But no sooner had he put on and then pulled. What the fuck? But no sooner had he put it on, then he pulled it off again, in loathing and horror. He pulled it off, but reflecting that he had no other socks, he picked it up and put it on again, and again he laughed. That's all conventional. That's all relative, merely a way of looking at it. He thought in a flash, but not only on the top surface of his mind, while he was shuddering all over. There, I've got it on. I have finished by getting it on. But his laughter was quickly followed by despair. No, it's too much for me, he thought. His legs shook from fear, he muttered. His head swarmed and ached with fever. It's a trick. They want me to decoy me. They want me to decoy me. There. Oh, sorry. Let me run that back. They want me to decoy me there. Decoy me there. I don't know. I feel like I'm pronouncing that funny, but don't matter. And confound me over everything. He mustn't. ¿Qué es eso? Yeah.
Muse.
He mused. Be absorbed in thought. He mused as he went out onto the stairs. The worst of it is I'm almost lightheaded. I may blurt out something stupid. On the stairs, he remembered that he was leaving all the things just as they were, in the hole in the wall, and very likely it's on purpose to search when I'm out, he thought, and stopped short. But he was possessed by such despair, such cynicism of misery, if one may call it, if one may so call it, that with a wave on his hand he went on, only to get it over. In the street, the heat was insufferable again. Not a drop of rain had fallen not a drop of rain had fallen all those days. Again, dust, bricks and mortar. Again, the stench from the shops and pothouses. Again, the drunken men, the finished peddlers and half broken down cabs. The sun shone straight in his eyes, so that it hurt him to look out of them. So that it hurt him to look out of them. Oh, okay. And he felt his head going round, as a man in fever is apt to feel when it comes out into the street on a bright, sunny day. When he reached the turning into the street, and the agony of trepidation, trap bunny baby, trepidation, a feeling of fear or agitation about something that may happen.
Trepidation.
Okay. In an agony of trepidation, he looked down. What does it say? Down it. Okay, that says he looked down it at the house, and at once averted his eyes. If they question me, perhaps I'll simply tell, he thought, as he drew near the police station. The police station was about a quarter of a mile off. It had lately been moved to new rooms on the 4th floor of a new house. He had been once for a moment in the old office, but long ago. Turning in at the gateway, he saw. Sorry, bro. He saw on the right a flight of stairs which a peasant was mounting with a book in his hand. A house porter, no doubt. So then, the office is here. And he began ascending the stairs on the chance. He did not want to ask any questions of anyone. I'll go in, fall on my knees, and I confess everything, he thought, as he reached the 4th floor. The staircase was steep, narrow, and sloppy with dirty water. The kitchens of the flats. Excuse me. Okay. The kitchen of the flats opened onto the stairs and stood open almost the whole day. So there was a fearful smell and heat. The staircase was crowded with porters going up and down with their books under their arms, policemen, and persons of all sorts and both sexes. The door of the office, too, stood wide open. Peasants stood waiting within. There, too, the heat was stifling, and there was a sickening smell of fresh paint and stale oil from the newly decorated rooms. After waiting a little, he decided to move forward into the next room. All the rooms were small and low-pitched. A fearful impatience drew him on and on. No one paid attention to him. In the second room, some clerk sat writing, dressed hardly better than he was, and rather a queer-looking set. He went up to one of them. "What is it?" He shouted the notice he had. He showed the notice he had received. "You are a student?" the man asked, glancing at the notice. "Yes, formerly a student." The clerk looked at him, but without the slightest interest. He was a particularly unkempt person. ¿Qué chingados es eso? I thought it was unkept.
Unkempt.
Especially of a person having an untidy or disheveled appearance. It's the same thing. Unkept. I don't know. Kid. Anyways, he was unkempt person with the look of a fixed idea in his eye. There would be no getting anything out of him because he has no interest in anything, thought Raskolnikov. "Go in there to the head clerk," said the clerk, pointing towards the furthest room. He went into that room, the fourth in order. It was a small room and packed full of people, rather better dressed than in the outer rooms. Among them were two ladies. One, poorly dressed in the morning, sat at the table opposite of the chief clerk, waiting. No, it says writing something at his dictation. The other, a very stout, buxom. I don't know, but I want some buxom. I'm sorry for that.
Buxom.
Oh, never mind. Okay, I'll stop. No, stop. Sorry about that. I'm embarrassed now. Very stout, buxom woman with a purplish red, blotchy face, excessively smartly dressed with a brooch in her What the fuck is a brooch? I don't know if I want a brooch. Let's find out. An ornament fastened to clothing, hinge, pin, and catch. Ni idea. La neta, ni idea. A lo mejor sí sé que es bosom. Ya tengo una idea que es. Es como una faja, ¿no? Pienso, no sé. As big as a saucer. Was standing on one side, apparently waiting for something. Raskolnikov thrust his notice upon the head clerk. The latter glanced at it, said, "Wait a minute," and went on attending to the lady in the morning. He breathed more freely. It can't be that. By degrees, he began to regain confidence. He kept urging himself to have courage and be calm. Some foolishness, some trifling carelessness, and I may betray myself. It's pity there's no air here, he added. It's stifling. It makes one's head dizzier than ever, and one's mind too. He was conscious of a terrible inner turmoil. He was afraid of losing his self-control. He tried to catch at something and fix his mind on it, something quite irrelevant, but he could not succeed in this at all. Yet the head clerk greatly interested him. He kept hoping to see through him and guess something from his face. He was a very young man, about 22. Is that 22, bro? Why is it? Anyways, with a dark, mobile face. I don't know what that means, but okay. That looked older than his years. He was fashionably dressed and foppish. That's a funny word. Foppish. Foppish.
Foppish.
Concerned with one's clothes and appearance in an affected and excessive way, typically used of a man. Foppish. Okay. I'm a remember that. With his hair parted in the middle, well combed and pomaded. Pomaded? I don't know how to say it, so I'm gonna just keep going. And wore a number of rings on his well scrubbed fingers and a gold chain on his waistcoat. He said a couple of words in French to a foreigner who was in the room and said them fairly correctly. Luis Ivanova, you can sit down, he said casually to the gaily dressed, purple-faced lady who was still standing as though not venturing to sit down, though there was a chair beside her. Ich denk. Sound like a bad word. Anyways, said the latter, and softly, with a rustle of silk, she sank into the chair. Her light blue dress, trimmed with white lace, floated about the table like an air balloon, and filled almost half the room. She smelled of scent, but she was obviously embarrassed at filling half the room and smelling so strongly of scent. And though her smile was impudent, I don't believe that that's like flawless, but not showing due respect to another person. Oh, impertinent. Oh,
Impudent.
Como imprudente. Impudent. Imprudente. See, bro, you guys learned something out of here. Or I learned something. I don't know about you. Anyways. And though her smile was impudent, as well as cringing, it betrayed evident and uneasiness. The lady in the morning had done at last, and got up. All at once, with some noise, an officer walked in a very jauntily, with a peculiar swing of his shoulders at each step. He tossed. I don't know what this is. It says he tossed his cockaded cap. Okay. It says cockaded is an adjective that means decorated with a cockade, which is a decorative knot or bandage or of ribbons, feathers, or cloth. His cockaded cap on the table and sat down in an easy chair. The smart lady positively skipped from her seat on seeing him and fell to curtsing. Curtsing? Is that even a thing?
Curtsy.
Pero que chingados is curtsy? It's like bend a knee. Is it like not like bowing down or something like that? Yeah, it's whatever. Seeing curtsying in a sort of ecstasy. But the officer took not the smallest notice of her, and she did not venture to sit down again in his presence. He was the assistant superintendent. He had a reddish mustache that stood out horizontally on each side of his face, and extremely small features, expressive of nothing much except a certain insolence. He looked askance. Dude, I'm looking up so many words right now.
Askance.
Askance. With an attitude or look of suspicion or disapproval. Askance. He looked askance and rather indignantly at Raskolnikov. He was so very badly dressed, and in spite of his humiliating position, his bearing was by no means in keeping with his clothes. Raskolnikov had unwarily fixed a very long and direct look on him, so that he felt positively affronted. "What do you want?" he shouted, apparently astonished that such a ragged fellow was not annihilated by the majesty of his glance. "I was summoned by a notice," Raskolnikov faltered. It says, start to lose strength or momentum.
Falter.
Damn. For the recovery of money due from the student, the head clerk interfered hurriedly, tearing himself from his papers. "Here." He flung Raskolnikov a document and pointed out the place. "Read that." "Money? What money?" thought Raskolnikov. But then, it is certainly not that. And he trembled with joy. He felt sudden, intense, undescribable relief. A load was lifted from his back. "And pray, what time were you directed to appear, sir?" shouted the assistant superintendent, seeming for some unknown reason for... I didn't say Siri, bro. And trembled with joy. He felt sudden, intense, undescribable relief. A load was lifted from his back. "And pray, what time were you directed to appear here, sir?" shouted the assistant superintendent, seeming for some unknown reason more and more aggravated. "You are told to come at 9, and it is now... You are told to come at 9, and now it's 12. The notice was only brought me a quarter of an hour ago," Raskolnikov answered loudly over his shoulder. To his own surprise, he too grew suddenly angry and found a certain pleasure in it. And it is enough that I have to come here ill with fever. Kindly refrain from shouting." "I'm not shouting. I'm speaking very quietly. It's you who are shouting at me. I'm a student, and allow no one to shout at me." The assistant superintendent was so furious that for the first minute he could only splutter inarticulately. He leaped up from his seat. "Be silent. You are in a government office. Don't be imprudent, sir." You're in a government office too," cried Raskolnikov, "and you are smoking a cigarette as well as shouting. So you are showing disrespect to all of us." He felt an indescribable satisfaction at having said this. The head clerk looked at him with a smile. The angry assistant superintendent was obviously disconcerted. "That's not your business," he shouted at last with an unnatural loudness. "Kindly make the declaration demanded of you. Show him. Alexander Griod... Alexander Grigorievich. There is a complaint against you. You don't pay your debts. You're a fine bird." But Raskolnikov was not listening now. He had eagerly clutched at the paper. In haste to find an explanation, he read it once and a second time, and still did not understand. "What is this?" he asked the head clerk. "It is for the recovery of money in an IOU, a writ. You must either pay it, with all expenses, costs, and so on, or give a written declaration when you can pay it, and at the same time an undertaking not to leave the capital without payment, and not to sell or conceal your property. The creditor is at liberty to sell your property, and proceed against you according to the law. But I'm not in debt to anyone. That's not our business here. An IOU for 115 rubles, legally attested and due for payment, has been brought us for recovery, given by you to the widow as to the given by you to the widow of Assessor Zarnisin 9 months ago, and paid over by the widow Zarnisin to one Mr. Chebarov. We therefore summon you hereupon." "But she is my landlady." "And what if she is your landlady?" The head clerk looked at him with a condescending smile of compassion, and that at the same time was a certain triumph, as at a novice under fire for the first time, as though he would say, "Well, how do you feel now?" But why did he care now for an IOU, for a rate of recovery? Was that worth worrying? Was that worth worrying about now? Was it worth attention even? He stood, he read, he listened, he answered. He even asked questions himself, but all mechanically. The triumphant sense of security, of deliverance from overwhelming danger, that was what filled his whole soul that moment, without thought for the future, without analysis, without suppositions or surmises.
Surmise.
Surmises. No, wait, that doesn't sound right. Surmises? I don't care. Suppose that something is true without having evidence to confirm it.
Surmise.
Surmises. Okay, that sounds right. Without suppositions or surmises. Without doubts and without questioning. It was an instant of full, direct, purely instinctive joy. But at that very moment, something like a thunderstorm took place in the office. The assistant superintendent, still shaken by Raskolnikov's disrespect, still fuming and obviously anxious to keep up his wounded dignity, pounced on the unfortunate smart lady, who had been gazing at him ever since he came in with an exceedingly silly smile. "You shameful hussy." What's a hussy?
Huzzy.
Hussy. A grown woman who behaves in a disrespectful or inappropriate way or who has many casual oh, did you just call her a huzz? That's crazy. "You shameful hussy," he shouted suddenly at the top of his voice. The lady in the morning had left the office. What was going on at your house last night? A disgrace again? You're a scandal to the whole street. Fighting and drinking again. Do you want the house of correction? Why, I have warned you 10 times over that I would not let you off the 11th. And here you are again. Again, you. The paper fell out of Raskolnikov's hand, and he looked wildly at the smart lady who was so unceremoniously treated. But he soon saw what it meant, and at once began to find positive amusement in the scandal. He listened with pleasure, so that he longed to laugh and laugh. All his nerves were on edge. Ilya Petrovich, the head clerk, was beginning anxiously, but stopped short, for he knew from experience that the enraged assistant could not be stopped except by force. As for the smart lady, at first she positively trembled before the storm, but strange to say, the more numerous and violent the terms of abuse became, the more amiable. ¿Qué es eso como amable?
Amiable.
Having or displaying a friendly. Oh, I think it is. It's like amable. Amiable. The more amiable she looked, and the more seductive the smiles she lavished on the terrible assistant. She moved uneasily and curtsied incessantly, waiting impatiently for a chance of putting in her word. And at last she found it. And I'm going to wrap it up right there.